Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Saturday evening tutorial. Today we will be looking at an introduction to a new concept, right? So I am not going to go too deep, but I'm just going to try introduce it on a very light scale. So anyone that doesn't have understanding of maybe software design patterns and MVC will understand it. And after this section, the video is going to be shared for everyone that missed it. And I am still going to talk about this on Monday, right? So I am still going to repeat whatever I'm going to say here, whatever we're going to look into here on Monday. So we want to talk about MVC, right? Because this is like more of what we'll be doing, we'll be doing like with Salesforce, right? We're going to talk about MVC, talk about the different components of MVC. Then I am going to go into, I think one of us asked last week, right? I think it was in Git if we're going to do servers, right? And how to host whatever we build on the front end, right? So I'm just going to give a little talk on servers and on how they all work together, right? Then I'm going to make sure everyone gets Node installed today. So I think we have a large chunk of our attenders available today, right? So I'm going to try to see or try to be sure everyone in the class today gets Node installed, right? Because we'll be using it from next week, but I won't do anything on servers and Node today. Okay, so I'm just going to start by talking about MVC, right? So basically what we've been doing, right? Writing HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? To some extent, and JavaScript on the web, right? Our script file manipulating the web page, right? We've just been doing one aspect of a software design pattern, right? So software design patterns or architecture are like patterns or like kind of systems used to build softwares, right? So when I say software, I'm not talking about a website. Now I'm talking about a fully fledged dynamic applications, right? Because we are going to be building applications, not just websites. So MVC, can we just please stay on mute? Thank you. So MVC, it's a particular type of software design. So if I just do this, if I just search for software architecture patterns, right? There are a whole lot of them. I'm looking for Wikipedia. Sorry. There are a whole lot of them, right? Let me see if this lists them out. But the one I want to focus on is called MVC, right? So I think that's like, so we have MVC here. So there are a whole lot of them, event-driven, concurrency-driven, and stuff like that, right? So the stuff is applications and softwares, right? Dynamic applications and softwares are built using software design patterns, right? Design or architectural patterns. But what we're going to be working with, or the design pattern we're going to use both in Salesforce and maybe because we are in JavaScript month, I'm going to use the JavaScript language to kind of teach us MVC, right? Is MVC. And the meaning, right? MVC just is an acronym for model view controller pattern, right? So we're going to be looking at MVC, how to design for the remaining 2 weeks of our class, how to design applications with the MVC design pattern and just try to understand its usage to JavaScript, right? So okay, MVC is a simple design or architectural pattern, right? Used in software projects. So if you're building software applications, right? Like dynamic applications like social media sites. So basically, right, if I say dynamic application, right? I'm talking about like, for example, the websites we built, all our tags are like maybe a portfolio site or an information site. We call them static. If I can get where I can type, we call them static sites, right? But applications or softwares that require data and the view changes or what you see changes based on what you click or what you input. Maybe you log in. If you log in, based on your permissions, you see different stuff. Those are dynamic applications, right? So software design patterns are used to build dynamic applications. Yeah, so in MVC pattern, application and its development are divided into 3 interconnected parts. So what we've done last month, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are just one. Okay, let me not include JavaScript. Let me say JavaScript on the web are just like one part or one section of the MVC design pattern, right? So I'm just going to go into the three different parts of the MVC design pattern, right? I am going to explain them. Then I'm going to use maybe 2 or 3 images I have on this my content to kind of maybe help and drive the point home, right? So MVC stands for model. Model, view, and controller, right? So previously we've just been building the view parts of an application on a website, right? Because we've not had much reason to play with data and manipulate data, right? But when we start building software, we're going to see that we need models. I'm going to explain what models are, views, and controllers, right? So basically, right, model represents the structure of the application, right? It maintains the data of the application. Essentially, it's the database part of the application. So if you've heard of maybe, you should have heard of database like in development, right? Database, model, the user tables. Yeah, I think most of all these stuff we already kind of exposed to it by Salesforce a little bit, but it gets more practical when you have to write it yourself, right? So model represents the database part of an application, right? Where you store data, define how your data will be stored. It's the same thing with what we do. We are doing in Salesforce admin, we're creating objects, right? So all those objects, I think in Babatopes class, when it was any of the introductory classes, he'll tell us that objects are just tables in the DB, right? Then the fields and relationships are fields or columns in the table. We're going to get into that maybe next week when we open this up very well, right? But just know the model part or model in the MVC, it has to do with data, right? So we're going to see a pictorial representation of the whole stuff, right? So the model determines how the database is structured, defining a section of the application that interacts with the database, right? So model just defines how your data will be structured, right? Like your objects, you create a new field, maybe you create an email field, create a date field, create a bill number, right? So those are all model. Those are all those are all those are all the model part of the application, right? Then view is what is presented to the user, as easy as that. For example, right, I can still use the Salesforce platform as an example, right? We have the setup, right? Whenever I go to your setup to access your object manager, you're going to kind of edit and play around with the models, right? That's the back end. Then the front end is where you see what you played around with in the back end, right? So that's just like a typical example with Salesforce, but practically views are just our front ends, right? Let me open W3 Schools, right? So this is a view component, so this is the view part of the software, right? Whatever you see or whatever the user sees on their web page, right? Views utilize the model and presents data in a form the user wants to see, right? So when we get to routing, you're going to see how controllers and models work hand in hand to display whatever we see here, right? So if I go to tutorials and click on learn JavaScript, I don't know if everyone can see my URL, but you're going to see that the part on the URL bar changes, right? So based on routing, like the controller works with routing and the model. So based on the routes you hit, the controller kind of does some computation and returns data to you. So the view is what the user sees, or the view is what is presented to the user, right? Then the controller, right? So controller handles the request of the user and then generates appropriate response, which is fed to the user, right? So the controller renders the appropriate view with the model data as response. I'm going to explain this a little bit like more detailed, right? So let me just take the second statement. The controller renders the appropriate view, the model data, the appropriate view with the model data as a response, right? So for example, I send this request with this route, or it's called route, but with this path, right? the controller reads or listens, or the controller or the application has a route that listens to this and serves me content to the view based on what I have in my models or based on some logic, right? So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to kind of go over it again, but let me just use a little image I have here to kind of explain the relationship, right? Or how softwares are built using the MVC pattern, right? So if I go over this, I think I have 2 or 3 of these images, right? So this is just like the MVC, right? Written in like kind of separate sections, right? So this is the user, right? The user sees the view. So I am the user on my computer, right? I can see everything on this W3 school side, right? I am seeing the view, right? But if you look at the structure again, the user updates. So this way, if you go this way, right, it says the user updates the controller, right? So what it just means, the user sends requests to the controller. So if I do google.com, I'm sending a request. When we get to servers, we'll understand how routing works, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit today, right? I'm sending a request to the routes or to the controller, right? The controller manipulates the model, and the model gives me data to use. Like the model like kind of gives back the controller data to update the view, right? So I'm just going to use this as an example, right? So this is the view, this is what I see. If I click on any of these links, is sent via a route, like it's called the routing system, right? And the controller handles it. So if there's need to interact with data, the controller will consult the model and they both return the response to the view, right? So it's quite similar to what we've been doing, but it's not totally it, right? So previously we've just been working on the views, right? HTML, CSS, and working with static data. Please let's try to keep our mics muted, right? Okay. So yeah, we've been working just at the view part of the application, right? And we've been working with static data, right? So when we kind of move fully into building real dynamic applications, right, that has data coming from the model, right, we'll see how the user sends a request through the routes, the controller gets info or gets data from the model and manipulates the data and sends or updates the view or sends a response to the view, right? So if I go down, I'm just going to go up and take this come back over this one more time, right? So I said MVC it's a design pattern used in building applications, right, or software. You can use it to build little from like basic to complex applications, right? It's divided into 3 parts, right? So it can be easy for development. I'm going to go to my code editor. I have a folder I'm going to use as a sample, right, to show you guys like practically how this works. So, but it's divided into 3, right? Then the model deals with data, right? The model handles database, how just see it as your object, right? In your object manager and your setup. I'm very sure everyone here is Salesforce is a certified admin. Like, yeah, let me use that statement, right? So the model deals with data the way your object manager deals with tables or objects, right? In Salesforce, it's called objects, but in real sense, they are all models and tables, right, in the database. So the model part of the application is the layer or the part that handles data, right? So it maintains the data of the application. Essentially, is the database part of the application, right? Then the next part is the view, MVC. So view is, again, basically what the user or me as the user on my computer now is seeing, right? So this is the whole view, right? The CSS, HTML, and JavaScript manipulating this page, right? Then the controller is where the magic happens, right? So the controller is like a middleman between, what is it called? Is the controller is like a middleman or like like, I'm looking for the word, like it's what kind of bridges the view and the model, right? So the controller and the routes are like in the center. So if request comes in, it handles the request. If it needs to go to the model, it goes to the model to pick data, manipulates the data. So this is where you write, if it's JavaScript, your JavaScript if else, check the object, check the user object, write a function. So this is where you write most of your function, in fact, all your functions, your if else, your loops, your conditions, to set up and arrange the data, then send to the view, right? So I'm just going to try to see if I have another image that kind of explains it well, right? Before I go into my code editor. So this is another image quite similar to this. The only difference is this one has a user part of it, right? So this is the view here, right? So basically this is where the user is. So the user sends a request to the controller. Like I said, if I click on this link now, okay, there is my learn JavaScript tutorial. So if I click on learn JavaScript now, right? It sends, or the view, or like whatever action I made, sends a request to the controller via routes, right? I have a last image or a last chart that shows much more detail, right, with the routes. The view sends a request to the controller, right? So like I said, yeah, the word I was looking for was brain box, right? So the brain, the computer is like, the controller is like the engine of the whole application, right? So the controller manipulates the model, right? Gets data back, sends or renders the view. So view sends request to controller. View doesn't have direct access to model, right? View sends request to controller via what we call routes. The controller, if it needs data, for example, when I clicked on, let me go back here. When I clicked on tutorials, learn JavaScript, if there was any need to fetch data, I think all this stuff are static sites saved or static files saved somewhere, right? If there was need to fetch data from the database, we are going to see the structure of a model very soon. If there was need to fetch data to display this page, the controller goes to the model, fetches the data. Let's say, for example, I want to see all my friends on LinkedIn. So maybe I go to all my connections, So if I click on the connection, so I click on my profile, right? If there's data in the database that the view needs to render, right, for that particular action, the controller connects with the model, gets the data, and renders the view. Okay, so if this is a little bit confusing, if I've been a little bit fast, just know, right, that building dynamic softwares is going to seem or look, if you've not done it before, it's going to be different from what we've done in the last month, right? What we've just done the last month was we've been working on views, right? So building full-fledged softwares, we use design patterns, right? You must use a design pattern to kind of structure your system, right? So, and in fact, first of all of them always has a model, right? But the design pattern we're going to be using is called MVC design pattern, right? The M stands for model. So is where you kind of define or design your database, your model, how you want to save your model. If you want, for example, if you want a user to have a first name, last name, or if you just want full name, stuff like that, is in the model layer, you do that, right? You just design or define your data, right? View is what we've all seen or what we all know, the front end part of the application, right? Then controller manipulates or communicates with the model and does some calculations or kind of some calculations or some logic. Yeah, the term is logic, to display whatever you see in the view. Okay, so if I just scroll down, let me see. So in actual, like in the shortest form, the way you can just easily understand it, is model is the data part, view is the user interface part, and controller is the request response handler, right? So just see this as three guys or three departments working together to make a software or an application work fully, right? Remember I said there are different types of, let me say, there are different types of what I call it sites. So there are static sites, right? So if you have an informational site, maybe a blog is actually a software, right? Because it saves the blog post right in the database. So maybe an information site like your portfolio, your maybe landing page, right? Those are just static sites. You can build those with MVC, but it's not necessary. You can just do that in an HTML file. But if you want to build a full-fledged dynamic application, like maybe a LinkedIn or Facebook or Salesforce, that is super dynamic, you have to use a design pattern, or you have to use a way to kind of design your application, right? So, or model view controller, I'm going to use, before I go into I think I already have a project I want to use as an example. I am going to, one last time, use an illustration to explain this over again, right? So this will be the third time. So in case someone you're hearing it for the first time, it's just going to be a little bit understandable, right? So I've used these two images to kind of explain how these communications work and why each section is needed, right? So we're going to talk, I don't want to go into the importance of all this, right? Because the view can't obviously manipulate the model, right? It's going to be a security breach, but I won't talk about the advantages and disadvantages yet. So I'm just going to scroll down. I have a little illustration here, right? So this kind of explains it a little bit detailed, a little bit more detailed, right? So user sends a request through the server, right? So if I do www.w3schools.com, or my browser sends a request to the server holding, we talked about this in the first class of HTML, right? Sends a request to the server holding this, the codes of this website, right? So that's why you see server first, then it returns the front end, the view part of the application to the user. So if the user makes a request, it goes through, I don't know if this is, let me zoom this a little bit, yeah. So the user sends a request, it goes through the router to the backend, right? The backend is what houses the controller, a model, and database, right? So the reason this is a more descriptive picture, right? Because it has the routing. So if I click on SQL, you're going to see that my URL is going to change, right? So these are routes. These are at the backend. This is what we call routes, right? If I click on Python, it's going to change the routes, and the backend is going to give me content related to Python default.asp. Okay, so just know this is the front end. Maybe the user is here. The user communicates with the backend through routes. The backend are kind of controls or computes everything. So the router connects front and back end, right? So the backend controls everything in the controller layer of the whole application, right? So the controller manipulates the model. The model defines object structure of data in the database. Nothing new. Like if you're comfortable with objects in Salesforce and creating fields, just that the difference this time is you're going to write it by hand, like you're going to write the code by hand. Salesforce just provides an interface for you to easily do that, right? This is what models are, creating tables or objects and columns in the object, right? So model database is like like a software, like a technology where data is stored, right? So controller manipulates model and data, then updates the view, right? So okay, it didn't go back, manipulates model with logic and updates the view. Okay, so in a nutshell, MVC is just like a way to kind of separate concerns, right? You separate your model from your view, and controller, it's like the brain box that does all the work. I am still going to explain. I am a Word document I'm still going to use to explain this a little bit more detailed. But I want to just take a pause here, right, before I continue. And I also have a project I want to use to explain this, right? But before I open up to take questions, if you have questions, yeah, okay, let me just pause that. If you have any question, if you want clarification on anything I've just said, you can just raise up your hand and we'll take your questions. Okay. It's looking like yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you can stroke down, I just want to be sure. So there's no direct relationship between controller and view?
There is.
Okay, because based on the diagram, I think down, it seems like there's an intermediary, like the router. So
yeah,
plus information.
Like I said, are you talking about this one?
Yep.
So this is like a more descriptive picture, right? Because right here, it just says view to controllers, right? But if you can see, it says sends request, right? Yep. The way it sends request is through like, okay, there's like, the way it accesses maybe the controller, right, is through routes. So in your backend, we're going to see this when we start building server-side applications, right? You're going to see in your routes or your route file, there's a place in your route, you're going to have a path or a route listening for Python/Python/default, then you forward it to the appropriate controller. So when we get there soon, but just know the connection between the view and the controller is done by a router. So it's called like is the name describes it is a router.
So the router is like a separate frame, or it resides in the controller. I just want to be clear about that.
The controller, resides in the controller.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems every other person understands the MVC and the whole MVC concept, right?
Okay, so is it okay to talk, Sam?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so basically, is this just for information purposes, or is there a way you would apply to what we would be doing?
Like today?
No, like the MVC thing. Is it for us to have a better understanding of what we're doing, or is there a way this will be applicable as developers? Is it something we would, is it just for information for us to know how it all works, or is there an application somewhere that would we be applying it anywhere?
Yes, of course, definitely. In fact, all, or let me not say most, all your server-side applications, but as long as you're going through this track, you're going to be using MVC models, right? If I open any of my Salesforce projects, you're going to see, okay, for example, now I have this folder I wanted to show you guys. You can see I have a folder called models. It's a framework to building applications, right? And we're going to practicalize it. Today, maybe I'm just going through the theory aspect of it to explain the whole thing, maybe with pictures and diagrams, right? But we're going to build the application with it. So these are models. This is a user model, just like in maybe your object. These are routes, like Adekunle asked just now. I think I should have controllers here. Okay, maybe I named it. Maybe I named this one. Then these are views, right? So you can view, or maybe these are views. We're going to see how it works. You're going to see how to, like, maybe from controllers manipulate models and render views. So in practical sense, let me close this. This was what we were doing before, right? Our index is here, JavaScript. In practical sense, if we are building a software, an application, all those files will be in this views folder here. So if you can see this index, but just forget about the extension. We're going to get into all these frameworks later. I have my index file here. I can have my JavaScript and CSS. So in essence, what I'm trying to say, we're going to practicalize it, but we're just doing the theory aspect now. We're going to write codes based on MVC.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Sammy, good evening. So, in essence, the way I see it, this can be like the model, the view, the model, and the controller. This controller might not you can have a controller for the JavaScript, you can have a controller for Python, you can have a controller for PHP, and it's like that's if you're using this model and it's doing the same thing. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm trying to get your question. Can you rephrase it?
Like, okay, now we're talking JavaScript now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, okay, the user sees the view now.
Yeah.
From what you have explained right now, the controller, like, is the brain behind the whole operation. You understand? Picking from the model and sending to the view and everything.
Yeah.
This is what is there, and like if you're working with another language, can you use this model also? Can you have another controller?
Yeah. So it's if I scroll up, you're going to see it doesn't say software design JavaScript framework, right? It's a software design architecture. It can be used in any language. It's just syntax. It's just change of syntax. Different. We're going to get to Salesforce. We're still going to do MVC, but it will be in the same Salesforce language. So we're going to use Apex to kind of write. You'll still see, maybe if you structure your folders, where you're still going to create controllers, models. Salesforce saves the models in the org. So you're going to access the models remotely. You're going to have routes and stuff like that. So it's language. If you're talking about language, it's just syntax. It's the same. It's the same pattern and software design pattern. So it's just if it were Python, I think in Python language it has its own maybe formats to structure its folders, but it's still the same. Design pattern. So they always have a database. Then there's a controller section that gets data from the database and manipulates the data. Then we're going to get into all those, but just know if it's about different languages, it's just syntax, but all of them use the same pattern or other patterns if they want. Okay, so I'm just going to take other questions. I thought Asipo.
Yes, please, can you go to the first diagram?
Okay.
I'm looking at this first diagram. It looks very simple and easy to follow. And I do understand from the first diagram, there is no relationship between controller and view. But in the second diagram, please, can you go to the second diagram? We have the relationship between controller and view. So how did that come about? Okay, so it's just the way maybe the author of the diagram kind of created. But if you look at our if you remember our definition, right? And look at it. So user maybe sends a request to controller. In most cases, controller needs to get data from let's say model. If it doesn't need to get data from model, fine. It computes its logic and updates its the view, right? So if you can see from here, right? So it's just that they kind of put the arrow after model, but the controller in real sense, maybe I'm going to show you from the code, the controller in real sense uses the model, gets data, does some manipulation and updates the view. So the controller updates the view directly. If I go to the next diagram, you're going to see view sends requests to controller. Controller gets data from model and manipulates it. But in this one, they kind of came back and drew another arrow and controller renders the view. It's almost the same thing here. Controller gets or manipulates data in the model and renders the view. So controller the controller always renders the view. The model doesn't render the view. So it's just how this diagram was illustrated. Okay, please, can you describe the third diagram? The third diagram? Yes, this one, yeah. So this one is a little bit, not even a little bit, like, so this one is more descriptive, right? So this is the front end. Why you have this server box here, because whenever I type a URL in the address bar, my browser takes me to a server first and returns the front end codes, right? So if I click on any link here, so okay, let me go to the home page, right? Can you see my URL bar? It's just yes. So if I click on learn JavaScript, you're going to see /JS/default, right? Yes. So the front end uses a system called routing or router to communicate to the back end. If I go to this code base and show you an example, can you see these file routes? If I click user, you're going to see /create/user ID destroy. This is like delete, right? But I'm going to use create as an example. So this, let's just use this to present this /JS/default. So in your application, you're going to be listening for different routes. So if this route is hit, you're going to serve, this is a controller, right? I think I appended the controller directly here, right? So this is a route, right? So if you go back to this diagram, the front end communicates to the back end via routes. The back end will just have a list of routes it's listening to. So if you hit /JS/default, the back end is going to respond via a controller. The router is going to send it to a controller. When we start writing code, you're going to see how all this will work, right? But just know the front end and back end communicate via a system called router or routing system. So the router connects front and back end. So there's no way, for example, now if I go here now, just where to, you're going to see that the URL or the route to change. I'm very sure this application on the back end, they have a route listening for /JS/JS-where-to.asp. Okay, so just understand that this diagram is more descriptive than this one in the sense that it shows you the mechanism the front end and the back end uses to communicate, and every other stuff is just model, view, and update front end like we've seen. All right, thank you.
Hola, Akin.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, based on what we've been exposed to so far, can we say the view corresponds to our web browser, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the controller corresponds to like our console that on the when we debug, right?
Not fully, right? But you can so here understand it this way. Console is a tool, like, so you can use the console in the controller, right? So I can be doing something in the controller. For example, if I go to this page, so this is a controller. I appended the controller here, right? I can be doing, and I want to see what's a user object. I can console here and I'll see it in my console, right? So console log is a tool. We can use it in the controller, we can use it in front end, and we can just use it in anywhere we have access to the console, right? So console is a tool. It's not necessarily all the controller is. The controller, let me see if I can get a more. So basically, and what the controller just does in actual sense, it just manipulates, is the logic part of the application, right? So if you send a request to create, let me see, let me replicate this, right? So /js/where to. Let me see, for example, this is a route /js where to. So this request comes to our server. This is the controller that handles it, right? So anything I do here is the logic that determines what I'm going to send to the front end. So console log is a tool, like it's a developer tool, it's one of the methods like provided by JavaScript. Every language has it, right? I think Apex is system dot, or Java is system dot print line or something like that. So console log is just a tool, or is one of the tools like we have as developers. It's not necessarily the controller, but we can use console log in the controller into console anything we want to see.
So can we say controller is just like a set of rules that I just want to try and map this to things that we can relate with that we've done so far.
Yeah. So controller, it's you can call it a set of rules, but controller is where you kind of write logic and conditions that is going to, controller determines how or what gets sent or displayed on the view, right? So
okay, like our script.
Okay. Exactly, right? Like the script tag we've been using in our HTML, right? So where, I think we can use that, right? So we can say typically, I think if you were here the last time, we built all these applications, right? So we built some little games, right? So we can say if this were in that my route file, this would be my controller, right? So I'm just writing logic to determine how the data I got from the database, if I got data, is going to be sent to the front end. So I can, let's say, okay, this is, I edited this, right? This is a create endpoint, right? I'm trying to create a user. So let's say let me look for get. Okay, so this is not what I was supposed to download, right? So let's say if I got data, so models or user.get, now if I change it to get, I might want to remove, okay, I don't want some particular users to show to the front end. I'll now do my logic. I'll now do my for loop here. I'll now do my if statements here. If the users, if there's a user named maybe Babatope or something, remove the user or delete the user. Then when I'm done, I'll now send it to my front end. This is where it sends to the front end, rest or redirect. So we're going to get into all these commands, but know that controller is where you put your business logic. I think that's the word, business logic, or logic of your application, right? So did that help?
Yeah, it helps. And
right.
The database now can now be like what?
Do you know your objects in Salesforce?
Yeah.
Yeah, so database is like, database, right? Where you store data that relates to your application, right? Model is where you kind of define how that data is stored. So every database technology has how it stores and reads data. So if I open an example of a model file, this is basic. So unfortunately, this my model file only has username as the field, right? So if you remember in your Salesforce object, you have different fields and relationship, right? You can have username, email, stuff and stuff like that, right? So let me just download.
So sorry to cut it. So we can say the database is just like the variables that we declared or something in the code already. Okay.
So
All right.
database is where you store data in your application, not variables.
Okay.
Database, look here, the database stores the data, right? So whatever data you want to persist or save in your application, right? You save it to the database.
Okay.
Yeah. Omo.
Okay, so can we then say, since it's basically about, model is basically about structure, so can we then say that that's what controls if it's an email field, if it's date field, if
Exactly.
it's
Let me just give me a moment. Just let me see. Exactly, right? So I thought, let me just give me a moment. Let me download or let me open up an actual let me add a folder here that has few examples. So yeah, exactly what you said, right? You can have email, you can define that the email is email, you can define that the length, if you remember I said you can define the length, you can say dates. Let me just add a folder. Let me add a folder here and go and add this. No. Okay, let me use this one as an example. Right? So if I open this up now, I'm good. Here, right here, I have controllers, right? I have models here. Let me open up an example model that has everything. Can you see this, Omo?
yeah, sure, I can see it.
We have types, so maybe Mr., Mrs., Doctor. We have first name, and this is like maybe a different syntax from maybe what you know, but this is JavaScript. If you can see, this is just a JavaScript object. We're going to get into all this. I'm defining the type. It should be a string. The field should be first underscore name, last name, phone, and stuff. Maybe we'll get to email. See, I have email. Defining this type as string, supposed to be email, though allow no false. I can add, I don't want this to be no. So model is just like a blueprint of how data is saved in your database. Then your data gets stored in database. So model is like the structure you kind of validate is emailed through. So this will not save if it is not an email, right? If it's not maybe samie@gmail.com. So this is what kind of what the model file or the model part of the application helps you to do. It helps you structure your data. So address, city, stuff, currency, right? So I put my currency, the length should be 3 or 4. So model is just like modeling, right? Creating how your data will be stored. Then your data is then stored in the database. This is a typical example of our object, right? How we when we create fields. So when you create a string, you select either text, select it, put in the API name and the I think it's field name and label, I think something like that. Then you do some other configurations. So in Salesforce, you have a user interface to do it, but when you start writing code, you're going to do it by hand. Yeah, someone said schema builder, exactly. Same, they're all the same thing. Omo, did that help?
Oh yeah, sure, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think everyone is a bit clear. We are going to still do all this on Monday, and we're going to start practical stuff for Monday, right? I'm going to start with the basics of application, right? Just maybe one page or one line to explain this, right? So before I move forward, right, I think I wanted to just maybe jump into my code editor to show an example of how this works, right? Before I move forward, I want to ask, does everyone here have Node.js installed in their on their computer?
Not everyone.
What's that?
Node.js.
Yeah, we did that yesterday.
I doubt if I do.
I think
Some
everyone
of us
do.
didn't attend yesterday.
On the entire yesterday.
That's what we did all through yesterday now.
Oh,
Installing Node.js, right?
Yeah. Like an
Uh-huh.
hour.
You don't have Node.js installed, just can you raise your hand up?
Sammy, are we raising our hand if we do or if we don't?
If you don't,
Okay.
okay. 5. Okay. I think, yeah. Okay, let me just do this, right? If you're on Windows, if you're using a Windows machine, just go to nodejs.org. It's straightforward and easy for Windows users, right? Nodejs.org and download, like just download the LTS version. I'm just going to paste this link in the chat. It's an installer, so you just kind of follow through the installer and just be clicking yes, yes, okay, okay. For Windows, for Mac, please don't download it this way. If you already downloaded this way and there's no problems, but if you're on a Windows, just go to nodejs.org, then click on download LTS version. If you're doing it, you can let me know so I know you're waiting.
I guess we did this yesterday.
Okay,
sorry, Sammy.
Yeah.
Where do we go if we're downloading for Windows? You said, is it LTS?
Yeah, download LTS, please.
Hi.
Then if you're on a Mac, is anyone on a Mac for those that haven't installed Node.js? Okay. Yeah, so just make sure you have Node.js because whatever we're going to be doing from Monday, it's going to require Node.js, like it's going to strongly require Node.js, right?
Hey, Sammy, and you say just click next, 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 nothing to change?
I'm not sure. Just next. Install with the whole default settings. Okay, so you can do that, so you can complete it later. I just wanted to kind of initiate it so everyone should go through it. So let me just move to the next to what we have next.
Sammy, are we supposed to download Python? Because it's automatically installing Python on my computer.
Windows.
Yeah, Windows.
But they are all in the installer, right? Are you doing from the command line terminal?
No, from the installer. I clicked the installer and it's opened a shell, like a Windows PowerShell, and it keeps installing. Is that normal?
Yeah, it's going to just allow it complete. I think the last part of it is going to open a shell and try to run some stuff.
Okay. I thought my computer just got hijacked.
No.
So Sammy, I wanted to ask him, when I was installing, there was a place I ticked off. I don't know if I did the right thing or not. That was 2 days ago or so. So yeah. Do you know the window I'm talking about? Something to tick off if you want. Do you have an idea of what I'm saying?
I know there are some sections where you'll be able to choose what you want to do or what you want to install, but I might not know the particular one, except you remind me the name of what you ticked off.
Okay, never mind. So far it doesn't affect what I'm doing, I should be fine, right?
Yeah, you should be fine.
All right, thank you.
If you're not fine, we'll just rerun the installer, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
All right, thanks.
I know there's a part that says automatically install the necessary tools. Note that this will also install chocolate. This script will pop up in the new window. It's like a check mark. Should we just leave that alone or just keep clicking next?
Is it checked?
No, it's for you to check it. But
What does it say? Automatically install what?
Automatically install the necessary tools.
Yeah, please check it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I think we can go ahead now, right? I'm just going to talk about one last thing before I try to even do anything on my code, right? So all these model view controllers, front end, back end, it won't be possible without something called the servers, right? So it's the server that powers virtually everything with the front end and the back end, right? So I'm just going to, I don't think, yeah. So the server, this is a little definition I have here. The server is where all your codes reside, right? I like using analogies to explain before I kind of use the definitions, right? So for if we can remember, right, so we've been doing HTML, JavaScript, and I told us we have VS Code just helps us serve our file, right? So if you click on go live in your HTML file, so if I just open this HTML and click on go live, Black Forest training, it's going to open my HTML page in my browser. And if you check my URL, but this just means localhost, right? So in what I'm just trying to point out, right? My HTML code or this website, or for example, if I downloaded the template, is hosted on my computer, right? So that's what you should know, right? As long as the codes are here, the website or whatever software it is hosted on your computer. Your computer, your local computer is your server. That's what we call it, or that's why it's called localhost. For I think our second assessment that we pushed to GitHub and used GitHub pages, right? When we pushed to GitHub, GitHub was a server holding our codes, serving and holding our codes, right? So ideally, servers before I start talking about remote servers, and maybe if you host your code with a server provider, right? A server is anywhere your code, the code for all your application reside. So if it's on your computer is a server. Your computer is the one, or is what is serving those codes or that application. If it's on GitHub, GitHub is what's serving your application. Then if you rent a space, maybe you buy a server space from maybe AWS, Google or Microsoft, you're buying a space from maybe a third-party server provider. Ideally, what they are giving to you is a space on their very big machine on the cloud, right? It's not, yeah, on the cloud. So again, what I'm just trying to say, right? A server is wherever your application is, or wherever the files of your application is, and it can serve. So if I click on go live or stop this pod here, clicking on that button, VS Code or the extension helps run or read this code or send this code to the browser. With full-fledged applications, it's not as easy as clicking go live, right? You have to kind of do some server configuration and start the application. But for starters, just understand that servers or a server is just a computer that saves or is wherever your code is, or this server is where all your codes reside, right? So outside that, knowing that, right, understanding that when your codes are on your system is the server. When it's on GitHub is the server, right? What you should know, right, for applications, while building applications, if I scroll down, so this server you see that serves the front end, back end, and has all these applications running, has a special software on it, right? So previously we could just click on go live, or right click on a HTML file and just click on open with live server, right? So this extension just does something for us behind the scene that we don't have to do, and our index file will be open in the web page, right? So with building application, there's what we call the server side. Server side that handles like kind of how the application gets displayed. Sorry, server side handles like kind of listening and serving your application, right? So creating a server or a server, or maybe like your computer as a server, for your computer to serve and as a full server to display website, it needs some special types of configuration, right? So for example, I said my computer is a server, right? But I can only host what's it called, websites on my local host. I cannot make it accessible to the internet, right? So maybe Enobong or Ingito from their computer cannot, for example, now this is a PDF file on my computer. No one can access this from the internet, right? It's not connected to the internet. So server configurations, where you have servers, when we say you're building a server for your application, you have to install softwares and packages and configure your computer to be able to maybe host and like kind of receive requests or receive requests from external sources, right? We're going to look into that. It's a little bit technical, but that's why we have Node, right? There are packages that are going to help us do that, right? We have Node that we installed. Node comes with npm. So if you install Node, it comes with npm, right? Then we're going to use a framework called Express. So what Express just does for us, it takes off all the manual configurations we have to do to get a server running, right? So I'll just show you an example. For example, now if I open this blog app, right, and I go to server.js, so this is just like a basic configuration of what I did for this application to be able to run on the computer or wherever it's hosted and get served on the internet, right? So don't let any of this intimidate you. These are just some kind of basic configuration, but just know that for your application, whatever full stack application you build that communicates with a database, controllers, and all, you need a server for it to be accessible, right? For our whole tutorial purposes, right, we're going to use our local machine like Yoga. I'm going to show everyone how to configure their computers, like to serve applications, right? Then maybe towards the end, we'll see how to buy space or maybe use AWS or any cloud or any service provider, right, to host our codes. So what you should know in a nutshell, servers are where your codes reside. Have application some certain types of configurations and software, right? If you're writing it by hand, it's very complex. You try to write it by hand, you have to write some HTTP commands and stuff like that, but we're not going to be writing it by hand. We have Node, npm to install packages, and Express. Express is a framework, right, that just does all the server configurations for us behind the scene. We just need to be calling commands like we were calling in JavaScript, right? So app.set, app.use, stuff like that. We're going to see all this stuff from next week. I don't want to go into like writing any practical code for now. So model view controller makes up an application, right? So we've just been doing the whole theory part of it. We're going to start building from next week, Monday, or maybe Tuesday. Then servers serve our application, or is where it's server configurations. Okay, let me just put it as server configurations helps us make our applications accessible, right? We're going to learn how to use our computer and serve applications, right? For the difference, I talked about static sites and dynamic application, right? And I said with the HTML file, I can just click on go live and it will open, right? When we build a Node.js application, you have to come to your maybe terminal and run a command to start your server. So let me see, for example, now, what app did I import here? Let me see. Okay, let me open this in time. For example, let me use this now. This is just an example. I'm coming. Let me show you how maybe an actual server, right? So we're going to see, these are just some configurations, and there are packages or Express that just helps us do is that you see, you see application started on ports, blah, 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 right? With a static site, I just have to click go live. But when we get into like building our dynamic applications, we're going to learn how to configure little servers that can just serve our applications on different ports. Okay, so we need servers to kind of be able to serve our applications, right? We're going to look into servers and their packages. That's why I wanted everyone to install Node. I'm still going to ask to confirm. There are packages that helps us apps like kind of take away the manual part of writing the whole full-fledged servers, right? So Express is one of them. I'm going to be looking at Express and Node.js as a JavaScript framework. Okay. Yeah, so before I try to demonstrate like a little MVC application. Has everyone installed Node? I wanted to confirm, has everyone installed Node for the people that just tried installing it now today?
Yeah, I've installed,
Okay.
but I think it requires my laptop to reboot. So
okay, yeah. So later when you reboot it, you're going to start using. Okay, so I guess everyone here has installed Node. There are still some people that maybe could not attend yesterday's and today's class. So I think we're still going to do this on Monday. So yeah, I still have time. Let me see if I can try to demonstrate everything I've just talked about today, right? Should I go into trying an example, or I should still explain this more?
Maybe an example will make it clearer.
Okay. So I'm just going to, I downloaded this code from my old project. I don't know if it works. I'm just going to try use it to demonstrate and see how far we go. Let me see. Okay. So let me just try. Oh, I'm going to generate a new one. Just hold on, give me a moment. I'm trying to generate a new project that doesn't have all these complex stuff, so I can be adding the routes step by step. Just give me a moment. Okay, can everyone see this? So let me just use this rather than use what I had. It had some complex stuff I don't want to mix with whatever we're doing, right? So I'm just going to close all these. Close this now. Then try open that folder. Just open folder. Don't save. Okay, can anyone see this now?
Yep.
So basically what I just did, right? I just bootstrapped, I used Express to generate a project, right? So we're going to learn how to do this, right? I just bootstrapped and quickly generated it to demonstrate all what we've learned, right? So for example, I have now, right? So it auto-generated a basic application folder structure for me, or a basic application, and set up the server, right? So it's they call the server app.js. I won't explain everything here. We're going to learn that from next week. But what I just wanted to explain the concept of routes, models, and controllers, right? I'm going to create a new folder here and name it models, right? Save that. I'm going to create a new folder and name it control class. Okay, so basically this is like a dummy example of an app built with MVC, right? So I'm just going to start with routes. So if I go into users, right, I am going to see, let me see, just hold on, sorry. Users, okay. Just give me a minute. Okay. So this is the reason why we are saying this is because it's a test and dummy stuff, right? Ideally, if you go to the base of a website, you're going to see maybe a beautifully designed web page, right? So if you look at this, let me just show you how maybe all those applications work, right? If I go to the app.js, right? I hope everyone knows, right, that's like this / or accessing this URL or accessing the base URL of any website. I think I told us this. It looks for the index file. So if you did your what's it called? If you did your GitHub assignment, if you maybe pushed without an index file, you see that your GitHub pages URL wasn't working, right? So whenever we do this, we're trying to access, this is the base URL. And if I go to our server, we're going to see that for what I want to explain, what I want you to know, right? For every request, right? If I click on tutorials, learn JavaScript, I'm trying to access a path with a route, right? Every request hits a route, right? So basically, typically, right, in our route file, we're going to list out all the routes or all the requests we are expecting to come into our application, right? So these are the two that we auto-generated for us. I'm just going to try to show you and we'll add more, right? So this is the base route. Look how they call it index router. So always look for your maybe index or your base page, right? And if I go back to the Bit3 schools, this is the base of it, right? So so this is just server language, or this is just server config. If you've not done Express before, this might be able to be confusing. But what I want to show you is how this comes into the server. This is the entry of our application. Every request comes through this file, right? It hits the / endpoint. It goes into the index router. There are so many new concepts here. We're going to talk about modules, how to import and use modules, right? So basically what this stuff is doing, it's getting the index file from the routes. We're going to talk about modules, right? But let's just focus on what I want to explain. If I go to the index file in routes, you're going to see I'm listening for home page. Can you see this? Get home page. So this is a route and this is a controller. So forget that they put it in one file. I can create another file in controllers and handle this request. But for now, we're going to handle it here. So see, I'm just going to open up my diagram to just kind of try to play around with the communication, right? Or this would be more better, right? So let's say I go to this my page now. I enter the base of my little application is localhost 3000, which is the base route. I hit enter, it returns Express, right? So if you look at this illustration, sorry, from front end through the router, I communicate to the back end, right? And what route am I trying to access? I'm just trying to access the / route, right? So if I go to my backend now, you're going to see in my app file, on my server file, I'm listening for a request, right? Like any request that comes into my base, what's it called? Endpoints, I'm going to send it to this router. So if you see this image, if you look at this image, the router handles every request coming from the front end, right? I'm going to create more so you can see how it works. If I go to the index router, you see that it's listening on the / then sending the response, right? So this is communicating with, if you just give me a minute. Okay, so let me go back. Sorry for a distraction. My server is listening for a base route. It sends this through an index route. This is a route file that handles this request, right? So if you can see, the front end communicates to the backend via router, and it passes it to the controller to handle, right? This is a very small application, right? That's why they handle the request here, right? So they've responded with an index file with title of Express. So if I go to my views, you're going to see that I have a file called index, right? So basically, whenever I receive a request on the base route, I'm going to respond with my index view. And so this is just a way to pass variables. We're going to get this. So if I go to index, the only thing they are doing is welcome to title, and title was passed as a variable, but that's not what I want to focus on. So let's do something, right? If I do create a new route, right? I want to expect, I want to listen for Black Force, right? I'm going to give it a router, I'm going to pass it down to a router called Black Force router, right? So I just want to kind of show you how routes are created, and whenever I click on a link at the front end, it goes to the back end and look for that particular route in the server. So I created Black Force router. I'm just going to duplicate this and create or import my Black Force router, right? So we're going to learn about modules. So please don't get confused, right? Then if I copy and paste this, / Black Force router, I want to respond with Black Force file, Black Force view, and title Black Force. So this is just a variable, right? If I save this now, save this, and go to my view, create a new file called Black Force. I'm going to explain how these three communicate, right? And I hope I'm not confusing everybody by trying to do this, right? And I save this. And restart my server. So if I go to my little local host server, right? This is a server running my computer, and I access Black Force, right? You're going to see that my little application, my server, read this Black Force routes based on this image, right? I tried to access the / Black Force, right? Read the Black Force route, went to the route, so go to the server. Here's my server. I go to the server, read, okay, see, it has a Black Force route, right? Went to the route, went to the controller, and what's my command? For now, I'm not doing any logic, right? I'm not getting any user. I don't have a model. I don't have a database, right? But ideally, if I want to communicate to the database to fetch data, right? Maybe about our company, about stuff, I'm going to get data from model here, right? But this is just a very light example. I'm just collecting the route and rendering the front end, right? So if you see this, the view has everything related to front end, what we've been doing before. If you can see the same thing we have the link, you can have style sheets. If I go into this style sheet now, then style sheet style.css, and I put body, I put the color of all the text, the same thing we've been doing, right, to red. I'm going to see that my Black Force text should change to red. Okay, I'm going to install Node next time. Right, so ideally, I just wanted to show you that everything in this view is the same thing we've been doing, right? You can add your CSS here. You can add JavaScript here. And now I'm moving too fast, right? You can add CSS, you can add Java. This is pure HTML we've been doing, right?
Very, very fast.
Yeah, well, sorry. But the concept I wanted to explain, right? If you're building dynamic application, right? If I go to this website, I'm very sure these people have more than 100 links here. Like, I'm very sure they have what I think is more than 500 because of their references, right? For each of this URL, I'm very sure there's a dynamic route at the back end waiting for it, right? So if I click on learn JavaScript, I don't know why I like learn JavaScript. If I click on learn JavaScript, there's a dynamic file, there's a dynamic URL waiting for that learn JavaScript route. So if I click on it, it collects it and passes me to a particular controller that handles that. I don't know if maybe some of you might have experienced maybe a link with 404, right? Let me try it. .asp. I'm sure this should maybe give it, yeah, so you okay. We can't seem to find the resource you're looking for. The 404 just means I don't have a route to handle that request, right? So basically, right, in a nutshell, request comes to your application, right? You're the person that built it. You already have like predefined routes you want to listen to and handle, right? You can have users. Oh, okay, for example, let me play with users now. I'm going to go to the users routes and open up the file. So it says response with a resource, right? So this is a controller. Let's do something now. Exactly what we've been playing around with const users, because I'm going to create an array of users, right? The first one, or let's create a list of users first, not an array of objects. Let me just say enobong. So this is typically what we can be doing in a controller, right? Samie and Gitu, right? If I save this, I can respond. Okay, this is just responding with a string. I can do this and send a variable, right? And say users plus users. So let's use this as an example of assessing model, right? Please don't get confused, right? Let's use this as an example of assessing model. I'm just trying to show that this is a typical controller. Manipulates data, sends the data to the front end. The front end now uses the data to maybe display whatever it wants to be displayed. So if I go to, okay, there's no user, just hold on before I take questions. I'll create a user's view file. Then I'll just paste this. Sorry. I copied the wrong stuff. Okay. Okay, now I'm doing stuff too complex. I don't want to type running. I just want users. Okay, so like I explained, right? A typical maybe MVC application or server, right? We're just listing for different routes, right? Already demonstrated with Blackforce, but we didn't use, or I didn't kind of demonstrate maybe using dummy data, right? So for our users now, we're listening for a route called users, right? So whenever a front-end user from the view clicks on maybe user, so it tries to access the users, I'm trying to create a scenario that we are accessing the database here, right? I created the user data store as an array. So in typical sense, you might want to get data from your user from your database. Then I sent it to the front end. So you can see the communication from the server to routes. If I open up this page, from front end, clicked on users via the router, when it goes to the backend via the router. The backend is my server, right? So the backend already listens for a user's route. It sends it to the controller. For now, the controller is inside this file, but I can still, this is a function, right? Okay, so this is the same thing we did with event list, and this is a function. I can take off this function and create it in a different file and put here, but I don't want to get things too complex. I sent it to the front end with my variables, right? The data I played around with. So again, if you go to this data, you see that model plays with data, then it can send that data to the front end, right? I can get all the users in Blackforce and send to the front end. So in our case, I created a dummy user array. I sent it to the front end. I went to the front end. right? And I just, okay, see, these are our students, right? So if I save this now, you're going to see that the users I got from my dummy data store is being displayed on our web page. So this is our user. So this can be a full-fledged web page, right? If I had a full-fledged HTML file with CSS, it's going to display beautifully, but I'm just writing text in a p tag, right? So you can see basically, right? If you kind of watched well, you're going to see the like the concept of the whole communication, right? It accesses my server via routes. I handle or listen to the routes and gives it a controller, right? The controller is just a function. Can you see? I give it the controller to handle that particular request. When I'm done with playing around with my data, we're going to plug in databases maybe later, maybe next week. I communicate to my front end, right? So you see, controller manipulates data and renders the front end. I can decide, okay, for example, now let's say I got this whole user from the database and I don't want Sammy to show up. Maybe Sammy is not supposed to show up. I can just, let's see, how do I pop array.slice? Okay, let me say on Gito, right? I'll just say users. It's just a typical use case of, what's it called? I'm a controller, right? I can perform some functions here, right? I've removed Gito from the list, then I sent it to the front end. If I go and try to refresh, I need to restart the server. One of the names, yeah, Gito will be taken off the list. So controller plays around with data. You can do your if else, do conditions, blah, blah, blah. When you're done, you send your updated data or your handled request to your front end. So just see what I've just done, right? As trying to demonstrate what happens in this image. View sends requests, controller manipulates data, renders view. I'll go back. View sends requests. The request comes as a route, like comes to the route as like if you've ever heard of the term endpoint, right? Comes via routing. Controller handles the request, plays around with data. This is a function, right? Plays around with data, maybe removes the data or hides the data or does stuff with the data and sends to the front end. So for every request, maybe anything you do, it always comes to the controller and controller renders the front end, right? So it just kind of basically explains this cycle. View, maybe in my view, I click on, I want to get all users, sends a request, controller goes to DB, manipulates data, gets users, then if he wants, it plays around with the data, then renders the front end. So this is just kind of basically how a dynamic application works, right? So you can display content based on some certain conditions and you can just do other stuff, right? So I know this might be, in fact, it was very fast. I thought very fast, but I was just trying to explain with like a little example. We're going to build from Monday. I'm not trying to build in any way. We're going to build from Monday, but if you have any questions, you can just ask. Yeah, Saga?
Yes, hi, Sammy. So I just want to understand, let's say in an enterprise, you're trying to build like an application. Who would come up with the MVC? Is it like an architect? Because
yeah, so
you kind of
you're talking about roles now, right? So there are different roles. So a solutions architect or a system design architect is going to design how your application will communicate with each other, right? So yeah, sometimes developers get to do it, right? But if it depends on the enterprise or the organization. So there are people that design it, then developers just kind of read and convert it and write the codes and create the folders and the functions, right? But sometimes developers do create the design, the system design.
Okay, because it's like, because you have to kind of know all the possible scenarios of what the end user can ask.
Yes, definitely. So if I get it correctly, you have to kind of know all the possible routes that is going to come to your server, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if there's a software, I typically, maybe my experience is how it's done, right? If there's a software, maybe the product designers and the system engineers, the system designers are going to sit down, maybe create user stories for the problem
Yes.
to solve. Then from the user stories, they can say, oh, because of this user story, the user will need to access this route or this endpoint. So it's designed first of all before it's developed.
Okay, so we're like almost like the last stage, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So every other person understands like the little example I just did, right? Hi, Shalom. She said no.
No. Sorry, I'm just lost for words. So are you saying that we can you pull up your VS Code, please?
Okay.
So are you saying for whatever view that we want, so basically whatever we're trying to show on the front end, we have to have a file for it in the routers views?
Yeah. Okay. You would. I can write the reason why I can write. So for example, the route has different files. I can put all of them in one file, right? But like I said, when we were talking about JavaScript, it's not going to be like very, very clean and efficient, right? So that's why it's just best practice to save them different file for different routes and different purposes. So same thing with the views, right? We have different files or handles. So I think the views is not non-negotiable, right? You have to create different files for different of these routes. So if it's still very blurry, this is just the first, like this is just the first day and the first time, right? This is what we're going to do for next week, and we're going to go over and over and over it again. So you understand how maybe this route, how to listen for these routes, send to the router and use controller to manipulate data like we did, then send back to the view. So it's just MVC, right? This is a full stack application. They communicate with each other. And previously with maybe our project folder, we just had just the front end. But for this, the front end is just one section of it. Okay, so Shalom, do you have any other question or concern?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Please pull up your VS Code again, please. I'm sorry. So I think it was, yeah. So the app.use, the one 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, what does that do? Is that like something?
Just avoid, I'll just avoid all this. Just act like you can't see them. These are these are configurations for the server. You don't bother yourself about them. We're going to talk about, most times it's auto-generated for you, but I'm going to talk about each of them later, right? Focus on the route, because if I try to explain all this, so this is logger. If you go to my console, you're going to see that it's showing me some like description. So it's just server stuff. So just avoid them for now. Then maybe later we're going to talk about them in depth. I just want you to focus on how the app receives the routes, controls it via routes, and sends it to the view. Okay, just ignore this for now. These are server configurations. If you remember, I told you when I was talking about server, I said there are packages that just helps us make it easy, right? It's called Express. One of them is Express. So if I were to write this with hand, it might take me 1 hour to configure my server, but Express just kind of did it for me easily. So this is server configuration. Just avoid it for now.
So Express is like Bootstrap for Java. We call it that.
Express, it's like Bootstrap for Node.js, right? Express, will I call it Bootstrap? Yeah, it's a framework. Yeah, it's a Node.js framework, right? So if I go to, I think Enobong shared this in the group or someone. If I go to Express, let me see their official definition. Yeah, so it's a web framework for Node.js. So it's a bootstrap for Node.js. It already does so many stuff you have done by hand and just give you, for bootstrap gives you classes. But Express gives you methods to use.
Okay. My last question would be, how much of this do we need for sale? I know someone has asked this already, but for my sanity right now, how much of this do we need for Salesforce development? All of this?
You just need to understand the concept, right? The MVC and how, because JavaScript is just, I'm just trying to introduce you to the concept with JavaScript, right? You're going to do this a whole lot in Salesforce. By doing it a whole lot, I don't mean writing Express. You're not going to see app.use or stuff like that. You're just going to do the whole MVC concept, right? You're going to have models. You're going to create schemas. For Salesforce gives you user interface to do that, but once you get to coding it, you're going to write it yourself. You're going to write controllers and classes, right? To receive data, manipulate data, then you display it with your maybe Visual Force pages or Lightning Web Components. So JavaScript, we are trying to use JavaScript to introduce you to the concept, and you already know JavaScript to an extent, so you just learn the concept with JavaScript, but know when we go to Salesforce, the syntax will be different. So you're not going to see all the app.use, blah, 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 but you're still going to do routing, controllers and classes and models in Salesforce. So this is just like an introduction to MVC, but we're using JavaScript as an introduction.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to Ola.
So maybe it's because I didn't attend the classes today, but with today I understand the concept, but the implementation, or let me say the practicalities, where I got confused. Because before I was thinking JavaScript would be like maybe the toughest, the backend kind of thing. But now that you are teaching the back end proper, I believe, that talks about the routing and the maybe receiver and sender kind of model. I think I got confused with the implementation. And I wonder if it's really necessary to, I'm not saying it's not necessary to learn, but if, let's say I got confused and I give up on this particular model view and this
MVC.
MVC, like, is it a be all and end all for me not to like get Salesforce?
Sorry, your last question, your last sentence. Sorry, can you come again?
Like, let's say I got confused and I'm so dumb I can't really get it. Like, will it like stop me from getting Salesforce developer, like getting the proper handle of Salesforce?
I'm looking for the right word, right? So I think I just answered this when I answered Shalom, right? It's like what I said in the group. You're going to need this. So let me not say so much. This is what you're going to be doing with Salesforce, Apex, and trying to build Salesforce applications, right? So you need to learn it. That's the easiest way I can help you answer that question.
Like the concept, I understand it, but it's this code, this app dot something.
Yeah, exactly what I answered. Don't forget about the syntax here, right? Maybe when we go deep proper into it, we're going to get comfortable with most of this app, and you learn to ignore all this. I did not write all this, right? This was auto-generated for me. I'm going to show you how to auto-generate all of them, because we are not focusing on JavaScript. We are trying to learn a concept and move to Salesforce. For example, I'm a JavaScript developer. I can write this file by hand. But for you, I won't. That's why I asked Shalom to avoid this, right? It's going to be auto-generated. I'll just explain what they mean and move forward. We are not going in depth. What we are going to be focusing on is the concepts, routes, controllers, and models, right? So this is syntax, this is JavaScript, Node.js, Express syntax. So just learn the concepts. Then when we get to Salesforce, then you can learn everything in depth with the syntax on Salesforce.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Omo.
So I would just like to know what exactly are like the duties of a developer. So would we, I know developers, administrators, and almost all of us call ourselves consultants, right? I don't know, do developers also refer to themselves as consultants? Do we do all those things we learned in as an administrator, and also would have to do this? Because I'm already forgetting some things over there. So I want to know if I need to go back and, brush off everything, or what exactly are the duties of a developer? Thank you.
So this is way off the scope of our class.
Yeah, but I just want to know, right? Because
Right?
I just want to know for myself. Thank you.
It depends, right? It's maybe based on the duties of a developer or the duties of any role. It depends on the maybe the company or the company, right? So, but ideally, developers just ideally in an actual enterprise setting, developers just kind of build or execute what maybe consultants or system designers have already designed, or solution architects, right? So they just tell them, we want to build this, these are the requirements, these are the user stories, we want these. So with your knowledge as a developer, you know what tools to use and how to implement this, right? So developers build what is given to them based on requirements, right? Like I said, it depends on the company. You said something about developers being a consultant. Yeah, if you have like me with like if you have all the knowledge, right, you can consult, right? You can prefer a solution to maybe a new company and say, oh, I know, or I have so experience, I know tools I can use to build and automate your system, stuff like that. But in general, to answer your question, it depends on the company what your job as a developer will be. Sometimes you might combine. I think I don't have more Salesforce, so I don't have much experience with like Salesforce developer stuff, but other people will have that. But I know sometimes you can combine, or they can combine administrator and developer job for, and like maybe call it a developer. But ideally, developers just kind of execute and build, execute and build project or stuff given to them based on requirements by either a consultant or a solutions architect or a system designer, something like that. Okay. So it just depends on the company and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Adekunle?
Can I add something to that?
Okay.
Yeah, please. You want to add to the question?
Yeah, to what Omo asked about.
Yeah.
For my own experience as we call ourselves developers, I'm like I'm into agile Scrum, and in a team where you have a developer, where you have a UI UX designer that actually does all the framework and everything. And then you said the point is a developer actually, that's a JavaScript or Python or any developer, don't speak the English the way we speak it. In a company, that's where the business analyst comes in. The business analyst marries the the IT section and the business section. The business analyst takes all the English and interprets that English for the developers to develop. So if you call a developer a consultant, you might be going a bit off track, because the developers have to take what they're developing from the consultant, explain to them how they will understand, because most of the time, the end user, your stakeholder or your customer, does not know how to interpret what he wants to the developers. So it is the job of the business analyst, by writing user stories and acceptance criteria and all the jargons, explaining it to the developer in a way that the developer will know what to build. The developer does not just pick anything from the sky. He has to be explained to. This is what we want, this is what we want, this is how we go about it. Everything is explained in detail and is explained in short bits. This development is done in short bits, like in Scrum, we call it short iterations, where you build. Don't let me go too far. But just basically, if it's going to be difficult to call a developer, a JavaScript developer, anybody, a consultant per se, because he actually gets everything he's doing from the consultant or the architect or the business analyst. I hope it's clearer to you.
Thank you, Olake. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ola. Adekunle?
Okay, Sammy. If you can break, you go to the view, because I'm trying to develop based on what you just did. But my extension is Jade. Is it Jade or Jade? So I'm just, and you have EJS, right? So I just want to know if I've done anything wrong.
Okay, you use Express Generator, right?
Okay, I should change my extension, right?
No, you generated your project with Express Generator.
Yes.
So I don't know if you see when I auto-generated my project, I did something, right. Is that not from you? So I did something. I changed my what's it called? I changed my my view engine to EJS, right? The default was POG, I think, or something. So this is just view engine. We're going to talk about that later. So if you have Jade, then you generated your project with the Jade view engine. So if you can see, let me see. Yeah, see, look at this line, view engine. Mine is EJS. That's why all my have an extension of EJS.
Okay, but does it make any difference? Like, is it going to impact my work or?
The view engine you're using has a different syntax. So it's just syntax of the view engine. Jade has its own syntax and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Well, I can manually change it, or I have to install based using the same thing you use.
It's restful for you. If you know how to do it, you can reconfigure it.
Okay.
Just change it to EJS, and yeah, you can manually change it if you want. But if you want to restart, just when you run that command, at the end you see view equals something, right? Just change it to EJS.
Okay. All right. That'll be fine. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, so this was just like maybe like a theory introduction of MVC, right? And I'm going to do all of this again on Monday, but I'm just going to get a little bit more practical because Monday is an actual class. So I want to confirm again, right? Yes, everyone installed Node.js. If you don't have Node.js, you can raise your hands up so I can assist. I can assist you if you have any issues. So everyone has Node.js. Sagal, have you installed Node.js?
Oh yeah, I did. Other than that, we're waiting until Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so anyone has any other question based on what we did today? Or more?
My question is not based on what we did today. So if any other person has, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I don't think there are any hands up. What do you want to ask about?
Okay, so basically I want to ask, I'm not sure I get exactly how to call or how to output my my result on console. I would have read a little more about it. I plan to do that, but I wouldn't mind if you can just help as well, because I'm not sure. Maybe is it that all the things I built, they are not correct, or is it just that the return has just decided not to answer me? I don't know.
So I don't know what, maybe I don't know if you want to output them in console, or you want to maybe use it to manipulate a DOM and output the results.
I'm not manipulating. I want to use the console.
Okay, then let me open that folder. So this is an example, right? This script file now. So you wrote functions, right? Did you write return statements?
Yes, is it okay if I share my screen? Because when you are doing it, it's like I know it already. When I do it, it still no answer.
Share screen.
It's like we're in the same shoes, Omar.
Because I'm like, okay, I know this thing, and then next minute, okay, let me share my screen. Thank you. So right here. Okay, so like this one that you said we should just get the last word, for instance. Now, what I did, doesn't it look like what you do? I plan to go back to W3 school, but is this good or it doesn't look good?
Right. You're not invoking the function. You're not even passing in any parameters. You just vote the name of the function, right? If you want a function to execute, or you want it to execute the block of code, you call the function name, put parentheses, like the parentheses is what invokes the function. Call in your console log, like put parentheses, like function invocation. If you can just, how they explain this? See the way you called multiply with 5 and 9 with those parentheses.
That one did not work. It did not work. All of them, I just decided to what's it called? Comment them out. Because when I tried that one, it's not working. I said, okay, let me try. I just want to know if I have an understanding before I go back to read more on it or not.
You have to invoke every function you declare. So invoking the function, when you type, as you've typed the name of the function, right, get last word, put in parentheses, opening and closing brackets.
Oh, okay.
Now you're invoking the function, but you're not invoking it with any argument. So passing, look, you wrote an example. Okay. First of all, your function, I'm just looking at it, your function declaration is wrong, right? So if you want to, okay, for example, your get last word, you want to pass in a string into your function, right? Or one parameter.
These are strings, right? Like 4. These are four different.
You did, right? So I explained when I was saying teaching functions, right? Anything you pass there are parameters. So what JavaScript will see, you passed in 4 parameters.
Yeah, sorry, parameters I wanted to say, 4 arguments, right?
You want to use 4 arguments in your function?
Yes.
Really? Okay. Then inside your function, you're not trying to access any of the 4 arguments. You are still accessing the get last word.
No, Samuel, wait, what is really, you told us we can put whatever parameters we want there, right? Or must it just be 2 at all times?
You can put as much parameters as you want, right? But you're not using them in your function. And okay, typically, let me tell you what you want your function to do. You want to return the length of the last string of, is it last word or last string? Well, what does the question say, please?
Last word. Like okay, these are 4 parameters I have here, and I want you to be able to just get this very last one for me, right? When I invoke. You
want to pass 1 parameter, then maybe when you call function, clean that up. Just put maybe clean the whole for let me help you make the function, or clean the whole. Yeah, just put in 1 parameter, maybe just put string, put text, or just put in 1 parameter. Okay, so right now you're passing 1 argument, then your return, change it to noun.length. Noun.length -1, we even return a number. Change it to noun.length -1. Let's try this. This will just return a number. It's not do the actual stuff you want it to do, right? Now call your get last word with a string. Just write, put in your line 52, call the function with a string. Put, in passing an argument, right?
So I'm speaking English. What do you mean?
Go put your cursor in that parenthesis, like, then put a string in there. Just maybe type today is Sunday or today is Saturday. Just put a string. No. You have to put it in quotes if you want to type
a string, right? Okay.
Okay. Can you run this file in the console here? You haven't saved the file.
Okay.
Okay, can you see that your function works now?
Okay, but wait, Sammy, right? Okay, so the name of my function here now is get last word, right?
Yes.
My parameter is now, right? Yeah. So when I'm returning, is it the parameter that whatever is in here is what also comes into here, not my function?
you will not, if you look at it like that, right, it's going to be difficult for you to understand functions. So functions help you reuse a particular block of code over and over again. If you write the name of a function, get last word, and pass in maybe parameters or arguments, you want to use those parameters in the body of your function to do whatever you want your function to do, not call the name of your function inside the function and try to manipulate it, right? So now you want to get last word. You want to get the last word of a sentence. You want to get the last word, right? So what would the body of your function contain? It's logic, or maybe, yeah, it's a logic that returns the last word of your function, sorry, of whatever string is passed in the argument. So you're passing in now, but what you are returning just checks noun.length -1. So it will just return a number of whatever string. It will count the string, yeah, it will count it for you and minus it by 1 and return it. So what you want to do in the body of your function is to write a logic that will return the last word of a sentence. Okay, and if you go to your string methods, you have to do, okay, let me help you do it. Do return noun.split. Just change it to split. Open brackets. String. I just put a string, no, like empty, like double quotes. Okay. Double quotes, space in between the double quotes. Yeah, go outside double, close it. Then clear the length. Then put index, like put like curly brace if you want, like when you want to call an array. No, clear that. Square braces, sorry. Like an array. Index, so just save this in a variable, right? So it will not be messy. Just clear everything.
Everything.
Yeah, just that line, clear that line. Let me just help you make this function. Now explain it. Clear it. Do let's and give a name, maybe string array or array. Just do array and equal to now.split. So I'm using one of the string methods, right? Now.split. Like put the brackets, empty quotes, then put a space in between it. No, not angle brackets, curly brackets now. Opening and parentheses. Then quotes.
What's quotes?
Strings, like quotes. Yeah, put a space. Yeah, go to another line. Then try return now, return. And we want the last one. So do array index, like square braces. I'm sure you can use the word array. Then array, put array dot length -1. So this should work, right? This should return the last sentence. Just try it, save your file and run it. Then I'll explain to you what you just did.
I have to change this, right? Oh, okay, still get last word, right? Okay.
Undefined array.length. So console log array after let array equals noun.split.
Log. Console log.
No. After let array in your function body line 50, after let array, console log array. Just create a new line after it. Yeah, console log array. So this is the use of console log for debugging. You need to know what the issue is.
Is it console.log I should use or just
console.log? Yeah.
Yeah. Array.
No. It's a function. You have to put in parentheses. No, go back, close to the log.
Function, like when we, okay.
Yeah, but put the, there should be no space. Yeah, then put array in the brackets. Yeah, save and run your code again quickly. just learning. Okay. So array index, array.length. Why is it returning undefined? Array.length -1.
Okay, Sammy, never mind. Let me not take the, because I see it's already
Yeah,
passed.
so just read on functions, right? You won't want to be calling the name of your function in the body of your function. Then if you define a function, think of what you want your function to do, then write your code according to what you want, the problem you want to solve. Okay. Then when you have to invoke it.
Sam, can you just quickly, can she uncomment and show her what she's doing wrong in the other one in the formula one that she did?
Which one is that?
Okay, let me quickly show you down.
Which one is that?
1 second, I'll just please
You can highlight, no, highlight them, clear. Highlight all of them till that let array. Just use your cursor to highlight them. Yeah. Then do Control /.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for this one, function multiply num1, num2, and return num1 multiplied by num2, right? That's quite straightforward. Console.log, and I supplied the answer here, right?
Before you even run the code, I can see the issue. You named your function multiply, then you're calling multiply. Can you see?
Oh, okay.
If you run it now, it's going to work.
That's all?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, sorry.
JavaScript is case sensitive. You just have to be careful.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. I would read more. It's just that the thing is not entering somehow. Ah, man, it is well low. It's winter.
Calm down and read.
You need a good sleep.
Right. I'll try. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So I think we're done for today, right? We're going to see on Monday, and we're going to start MVC fully from Monday, okay? Hello?
Yes, Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, Amos, I can hear you.
Okay, I want to ask him, the last time you were, like 2 classes ago, you said something about using private defaults. And
private defaults?
Yeah, where we use the function, and you were talking about recalling when you were talking about submission.
I am trying to remember. Private defaults.
Prevent.
Okay, prevents defaults.
Yeah.
Got me scared. Private are classes. So what about it?
I wanted to know now when we were trying to create those buttons, multiple and multiplication and what they call it, and division. We didn't use that private default, and it's just
okay. So let me share my screen. Let me share my code editor. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So I said that day, right? Why I did that stuff, right? I had my buttons in a form tag that day, right? So I explained that once there are input fields in a form tag and there's a button in that form tag, if you click on, once there are input fields and there's a button, even if I don't have an ID here, if I save this now, let me just comment this out. I'll even remove the JavaScript so there'll be no either prevent default. If I save this and go live now, and just click on match, the browser is going to try. Okay, let me do something so you see that something is actually happening there. The browser is going to try to submit this form for me, right? I'm going to do /submit. So maybe this is an endpoint I want to submit to. If I refresh this and click on match, see, it's going to try to go to /submit. So what I'm trying to point to you that so long as you have a button inside this form tag, there's a default action for that button. And that default action is this. to submit it to this URL. But if you use maybe get the form element and add an event, or maybe add an event listener to this button and prevent the default action, you are going to hold that action. So whenever you click on the button, it's not going to try to submit your form. Okay, but if I have this button outside the form, it doesn't have any default action, so I don't need to do either of these preferred defaults.
Oh, okay. It
Yeah,
means the second one didn't have the button inside the form.
Yes, that second example, it did not have the button inside the form.
Well, I wanted to be clear on that because I was wondering that data.
Yeah. So once it's in a form, it has a default action to submit the form. Is that clear now, Amos?
Yeah, that's clear. So you said on Monday we'll be going for the MV views, but are we not going to get Java classes again or JavaScript classes again?
Yeah, we're still in JavaScript, right? So we're going to be
Okay.
doing, you can ask JavaScript questions. It's still JavaScript, Node.js, everything. We're still in JavaScript land.
Then, okay, I sent a mail to you regarding, I know it's long anyway.
An email?
Yeah, I sent an email to you.
What address?
The one using replying the project questions and updates.
Okay. I'm going to look at it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks everyone. Like we'll meet on Monday. Good night.
All right.
Bye.